All right, welcome everybody to day two of the Curbivore conference. We really appreciate everyone, each and every one of you who are joining us nice and early, and well, I guess late if you're on East Coast, but early-ish side if you're on Pacific. And really excited for day two of the conference. Today, we're really going to dive in to a lot of our panels, interviews, and we've got a lot of great programming lined up. So if you guys are having any issues, anything that you have questions on, feel free. You can use the event-wide chat, or if you're on the main stage, you can use the stage chat or the session chat. So it looks like everyone's been able to figure out the platform pretty nicely, and we really appreciate each and every one of you joining. I'm excited for day two because yesterday we obviously touched on a number of topics that intersect the food world and the tech and startup world. We've got the perspectives coming in from government and city tech people, but today we've got a ton of great programming. So really excited to dive in today. And obviously you guys can all check out the schedule function to see which panels are available. And we have been getting one question over and over: if the panels and talks will be made available later, recordings will be made available later. And the answer is yes. We will be sharing those probably sometime either later this week or next week. So if you want to watch them live, that's obviously ideal. But if you happen to miss a panel or a session, they will be available pre-recorded later. You just won't be able to see the live chat, participate, ask questions. And so we definitely recommend that you try and watch live if you can, since we're trying to make these as interactive as possible. So with that said, all the logistics and housekeeping taken care of, I just want to share a few thoughts, a few observations that I've seen, based off the conversations I've had so far with people in the conference. Highly recommend that networking session that we do during lunchtime. We had a really great discussion yesterday, and I'm sure we'll have another good one today around lunchtime, and you can check that in the sessions tab when it's open at lunch. But, I think one thing that I've noticed myself, obviously, during the past, 6 months or whatever it is of this pandemic, I think, obviously for those who don't know, I run a blog, YouTube channel, podcast called The Rideshare Guy. And we've also got a course for Uber and Lyft drivers and a book. And so really any box that you type into the internet about Uber and Lyft, I'm hoping that we pop up. But over the past 6 months, we've kind of really shifted. Obviously, demand for rideshare is way down, and it's really kind of all about food delivery right now. And that was really one of the reasons why, I kind of wanted to come and help co-organize this conference, because there is so much activity, so much action, so many people getting into the food delivery, the tech space, the restaurant space right now. And it's kind of like the wild, wild west. People are really trying to figure things out. So I wanted to just share, three kind of interesting, quick observations that I've found, and then we'll turn it over to our next interview. But, really, I guess I might have to consider renaming my site to something like the Food Delivery Guide, because that's really all of our top content now these days is basically about DoorDash, Postmates, Instacart, Uber Eats. We're reviewing new delivery services, grocery services, logistics, and it's really that entire last mile space that I think is all in the same ballpark. So, I guess the three quick observations that I've seen is couriers, they don't traditionally make as much as rideshare drivers. So Uber and Lyft drivers, when we've surveyed them in the past, they report making around $15 to $20 per hour before expenses. And couriers are more in the $10 to $15 per hour before expenses range. And, I think it's kind of logical. Most people will pay more for a ride for themselves across town than they will for their burrito most of the time. And one of the things we've seen with the pandemic, especially early on, though, that the earnings potential was huge for couriers, because there was obviously very high demand. Which mean, sort of implied bonus pricing, and the app's forms of surge pricing where couriers would get more money, but also the tips. The tips were a huge part of income. And just in general, tips are a huge function, a huge majority of a courier's income. I remember we worked with DoorDash on an article once, and they told me that on 97% of orders, couriers received at least some tip. So just to give you perspective, on Uber and Lyft, I would say it's a lot lower, more like 10, 20, 30%. And so I think that's an interesting dynamic to watch. The income, though, has come down. People, I think, are tipping less. And, right now, I think there was this huge supply. The second observation I found is there's this huge supply of courier jobs. I mean, they're the big companies, Instacart, that's hiring hundreds of thousands of workers. But I think there's actually more potential workers than there are actual jobs, right? I mean, especially with unemployment at records high because of COVID. So I think that that's kind of one interesting trend. If couriers are sort of their pay is coming back down to equilibrium, or sort of the averages that they were before, and now we have this huge supply of couriers, sort of more supply than demand. I think that pay could go down even further, and so I think that the dynamics there are interesting because there's really, when you think about driving for Uber and Lyft versus delivering food, there's actually an even lower barrier to entry because the vehicle requirements are different, right? As a Uber and Lyft driver, you need a four-door car, relatively new, relatively good condition. Obviously, not every car fits the mold and some sneak by. But, what we've observed on the delivery side is, I mean, maybe before the pandemic, 10 to 20% of people here in Los Angeles were actually delivering with a friend, a spouse, a family member, right? Because it's so much easier to park. It's so much easier to navigate. It's so much easier logistically to drop off and have help with groceries, for example. And of course, even if you don't have a car, if you have an older car or a salvage vehicle, all of these things are no good on rideshare, but they're okay with delivery. And I think we are seeing the future trend, which I've already had some interesting conversations with people at this conference about, is that obviously there's huge opportunity because on the vehicle side for couriers, the car is literally the worst possible vehicle that they could use when they're delivering, right? Especially in pre-pandemic traffic times. And as traffic starts to get worse again, you basically have a situation where, you might be delivering a burrito or a small package and you're in a 4,000-pound vehicle, which is obviously not the most efficient economically, even for parking, even for just navigating the city streets and speed and time, the time that it takes you to get from the restaurants to your customer, right? That's an important KPI for the companies. And so those metrics, I think, are all aided by, more efficient vehicles in the courier space. We've got an interesting panel later with a company called Zumo, Mina Nada from Zumo, that's putting e-bikes into the hands of couriers. And I know I saw Kevin from his company in Toronto, Zig. And so there's lots of opportunities, I think, in this space, and really just kind of, understanding the differences in these vehicle choices, I think, is an interesting opportunity. It's really at the intersection of rideshare and delivery. I know some companies are looking at vehicles that actually work, that are designed more efficiently and effectively for both rideshare and delivery, right? Where you have mainly most of the time 1 or 2 passengers in a rideshare vehicle. How do you sort of translate that well over to delivery? So those are just a few of the quick and interesting observations I wanted to note. And if you guys do have more questions about that, I'll be available in the networking session at lunch. And I don't want to hog the main stage too much since we've got a bunch of great panels coming up. Just wanted to share a couple quick things, couple welcoming remarks. And next up on the main stage, we've got a really cool interview about kitchens and community in the COVID area. So food journalist Esther Theng will be interviewing Biology's owner and chef, Judy Neese. I checked out this interview, should be really great, and really excited. We'll be broadcasting that live right now on the main stage in just a few seconds here. And then we've also got a great lineup of panels that will be coming up after, and you can find those in the sessions tab. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Esther and Judy, and they're going to take it away and show you all what it's like for kitchens and community in the COVID area. All right, take care and thank you.